The graduation address gives us the opportunity to hear from a distinguished member of our alumni community. And we're very fortunate today that the address will be delivered by Mrs. Gabrielle Henry. Ms. Henry is currently the Director of Industry Engagement and Development at the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. Ms. Henry has extensive experience across technical, financial information technology, policy and regulatory aspects of sustainable energy in the public and private sectors, both locally and internationally. Her passion for sustainable energy is now directed into attracting and establishing new energy businesses into Victoria, developing new energy sector capabilities and supporting emerging energy technologies. Ms. Henry holds a Bachelor of Engineering with honours in Mechanical Engineering and a Bachelor of Arts from this university. I now have much pleasure in inviting Ms. Gabrielle Henry to deliver today's graduation address.
Thank you, Chancellor Mr. Simon McKeon, Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Senior Vice-President Professor Susan Elliott, Dean of the Faculty of Engineering Professor Elizabeth Croft, members of the faculty, ladies and gentlemen, and especially new graduates. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting today and their elders past, present and emerging that might be with us. I'm going to make a bold statement. With an engineering degree, you can do anything. I realise this might sound like an outlandish claim, but let me explain. While as new graduates, your heads are likely to be full of the equations, laws of physics, procedures and the like that you committed to memory for your final exams, the real lessons that you've learnt will only start to emerge over time. That is, you know how to analyse things. You know how to solve problems. You know how to ask questions. And when you don't have all the information you need to find an answer, you'll find a way to be able to find those answers in a world with a lot of problems that need answers. And that's a powerful thing. In my final engineering exams at Monash, I was frustrated by a heat transfer question that didn't provide all the variables I would need to calculate an answer. But in hindsight, I see that it was preparing me for the real world. We rarely have all the information that we need at hand to readily calculate a result. We have to make assumptions. We have to ask further questions. We have to take multiple approaches until we find which is the right one, which is what I did in the exam. And I was surprised to find that I actually did really well on that exam, even if I really wasn't sure whether I'd found the right answer. But the quest wasn't for an answer in itself. It was to demonstrate that I knew, with the uncertainty that I was presented with, how to find the answer. And in my career, I've found that the greatest power is not how we demonstrate that we know how to do something, but in how we approach the questions that we've never answered before, that we don't know how to answer. So, to my heat transfer lecturer, thank you for teaching me that lesson. One of the things I lacked early on in my career was confidence. After first year of engineering study, I found a summer holiday placement as a maintenance engineer at an explosives manufacturing plant. What an exciting job, potentially very, very exciting. The plant was spread out over a large area of land and it looked like a lunar landscape where staff wearing white overalls cycled from building to building, dodged the rabbits that scuttled about as they went. So I was tasked with designing and having to build an improvement to a process line that manufactured detonating cord. Detonating cord is something that is designed to start an explosion. And I was to introduce something new into that highly engineered, safety-focused process. Having just 1 year of engineering study under my belt, I was daunted to say the least. The day that the production line was switched back on after my improvements were installed was my birthday. I thought, ironically, that if I hadn't done my job properly, it might be my last birthday. But I needn't have worried. Nothing happened. I didn't introduce a planet-sized crater into the western suburbs of Melbourne. I didn't blow myself and my colleagues up. The production line simply hummed happily, and I moved on to the next task. My boss and my colleagues had had faith in what I had designed, and I realised that if they backed me, I should back myself too. And I've backed myself ever since. The last time I was on this stage was actually for my own graduation. I was wearing a wig that I'd dyed myself in a lovely shade of Monash blue, and I'd planned to moonwalk across the stage, which I might add would be very difficult today with the carpet. I didn't follow through on the moonwalking, but the wig certainly drew a few smiles and, if I'm honest, possibly alarmed glances from the esteemed company that I shared the stage with. The wig itself, however, was significant. Throughout my degree, my mother had been very ill with leukaemia, and being her primary carer, I had struggled to juggle work, study, and managing her affairs and household. Early on, I realised that there was no way I could complete all of the assessment tasks and the coursework required. I was extremely lucky that at that time there was a sub-dean, Professor Alfredson, who provided a sympathetic ear and worked with me to revise my assessment requirements so that I could prove my knowledge of each subject entirely through my final exams. Without his help, I would not be here today talking to you as a graduate Monash engineer. We all face challenges, and it's okay to admit that you're struggling and might need some help. You might find that there's someone who will provide a solution that you didn't actually think was possible. It's always worth asking. In recent years, I and 7 of the women I studied engineering with started a scholarship program at Monash, which we funded ourselves. It's called FLAMES, which stands for Female Leaders Alumni Monash Engineering Scholarship. We had some specific aims in starting the scholarship to identify and nurture the leaders of the future. What we were seeking was what we had seen in ourselves, namely those who didn't necessarily get top marks, but who were involved with interests outside their study and in the broader community and committed to make a difference in the world. We offered not just a financial reward, but mentoring from a cohort of women whose engineering degrees had led them in very different directions, including banking, healthcare, energy, transport, even patents. We were astounded by the extraordinary students who applied for our scholarship and have been enriched through our association with them. And what we found was that they were facing some of the same challenges that we had during our studies, including uncertainty over whether they would find a job and where their careers might take them. And what I counselled them, and I would like to counsel our new graduates now, is not to worry if you don't have a clear vision of where you would like your engineering studies to take you. You are likely to find that out on the way, as my fellow scholarship patrons and I have. You may be surprised to know that before I studied engineering, I studied interior design at RMIT. I wasn't quite sure whether the course was for me, and I knew I wanted to study something more technical. And I'd met some furniture designers who had studied mechanical engineering, and I thought, mechanical engineering sounds like it can take you anywhere. So I came to study mechanical engineering combined with an arts degree. But as my study evolved, I found a new passion, sustainable energy. And that being an engineer with a passion for sustainability, I had a real opportunity to make a difference in the world, which is where I find myself today, working to develop and deliver our Victorian state government's vision for a clean energy future. So while I may not have become a furniture designer as I first planned, engineering opened up a path that was right for me. And the lesson here is also that my initial path as an interior designer might have been a bit of a false start, but that making mistakes along the way isn't a bad thing. It's the best way to learn. And you too may find like me, your career path mightn't be linear, and you may have doubts, and you may not be sure what your next career move may be. But opportunities will certainly present themselves if you keep your eyes open and go searching for them. Almost every job I've secured has come from someone telling me about a vacancy that I should apply for, or someone approaching me to work with me again. Don't underestimate your networks, even if they don't seem immediately relevant. I was talking to an old friend at a barbecue, and I have found they had an opportunity for a graduate maintenance engineer where she had worked as a tax accountant, and that's how I got my graduate job. I had my interview right here on site at one of the campus cafes. And a few years ago, after taking some time off, I was wanting to find another role. And I told everyone I could think of that I was looking for a job. And so I got 10 offers of work within a week. These offers of work were short-term, part-time, It was in consulting, finance, engineering, IT, and interior design, all sorts of things that I said, yep, I can do that. And I managed to take all those offers of work at once, which was interesting. So the lesson here, I think, is be nice to people. You never know when the next dream role is going to be coming from. One thing that I found in applying for jobs was that the key skills they needed weren't always born from my engineering studies. My jobs waitressing and working in retail helped me to have a confidence to talk to people from all backgrounds, which led me to deliver training courses on a new maintenance system to burly men working in mine sites in remote Queensland and the Northern Territory. My ability to wrangle an Excel spreadsheet through hard-won battles in the computer labs at Monash, along with a bit of postgraduate studies in finance, made me the person nominated to lead a startup company as a group financial controller. I wasn't an accountant, but I knew how to ask the questions to find out what I needed to know and to surround myself with people who could support me in that task. I was also very fortunate that my German studies from Monash in my arts degree took me to Europe on a language scholarship and ultimately led to me managing wind farm assets in Germany. The view from the top's great, by the way. It was invaluable to be able to speak to people over there in the office and on site in their own language. One of the skills that is always needed on the job, but is not on the curriculum, is the ability to get along well with people. I tend to find that the best way to win people over to your vision is not to fight their vision, but rather to forge allegiances, build trust, show respect, and understand their motivations. If you can show that what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to about it is going to help them achieve their goals too, that's half the battle won right there. And what I found is that I actually enjoyed my work all the more by building those strong allegiances. So, in summary, my message to our graduates here today is to back yourself. Find your hidden talents, wherever they come from. Keep your eyes open for opportunities. Don't be afraid of mistakes, needing help, or not knowing the answer, because your studies in engineering will serve you well in the world. You may not become a furniture designer or even work in an engineering-related discipline, but your ability to analyse and solve problems can take you anywhere. I look forward to seeing the impact you are going to have in the world of engineering and beyond. Thank you.
Well, what a wonderful, wonderful address to actually finish off 3 weeks of graduation ceremonies that this university has been conducting in recent times. And Gabrielle, that was an absolutely wonderful address. You know, you started off very emphatically, and it's absolutely right, coming from a non-engineer, that engineers can do anything. You do analyse things. You're always asked to solve things, and you've got special ways of going about finding answers, etc., etc. And boy, do I know that the world has a lot of problems for you to solve. Gabrielle, you went on and said something I'm sure resonated with many in the room, and that is that all along life's pathways, particularly in your case during your time here, you had the challenges of balancing some very, very important family caring responsibilities for your mum. And as I said, that's something that can strike us at any point during our life. There's very few, if any, that just simply have an easy ride right through life. Thank you for sharing with us that extraordinary scholarship program that you and a number of colleagues launched so long ago. I just can't begin to imagine the extraordinary impact that that's had on the lives of individual students coming through. You said that you developed a passion for sustainable energy after really you started your engineering pathway. You made the point so strongly that very few people really can define where they're going with any precision, certainly into the longer term. So be open for possibilities. Listen to yourselves, work out, like Gabrielle did, what really, really brings the best out in us. And your career in particularly sustainable energy here and ensuring that Victoria does the very best it can is clearly a remarkable career. Making mistakes. Best learning experience, well, as an old person, I can absolutely vouch for that. But you concluded by saying a couple of things. Firstly, be personable, be nice to people. Sounds a bit corny sometimes at a graduation degree when you've spent years getting that piece of paper with all sorts of technical backing behind it. But ultimately, Gabrielle is absolutely spot on, because if you've got a choice to be personal, as she said, to earn respect, trust, just develop good, strong relationships, they will propel all of us so much more than simply having that degree that explains that you know something technically. And sometimes perhaps engineers struggle a little bit with that because they think what we've done is all technical. No, Gabrielle is right. The world functions because people work together. And I thought the way she concluded was quite profound. And of course, the very final thing she said, back yourself. Back yourself. You're the only one that knows yourself as well as you do. Go for it. So, Gabrielle, thank you very much.